colleagues. It's gone past 2 o'clock now, and I think everyone is now in attendance. I've got quite a lot of housekeeping to get to before we make a proper start, because this is the first of the budget meetings as well, or part of the papers that are presented today. So I'll start with the first usual introduction. So good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Education PDSP. I'm Councillor Andrew Maguire and I'm the chair of the PDSP. This meeting is being broadcast live and a recording will be made available afterwards on the Council's website. I'm being assisted today by Greg Welsh, the Council's Deputy Chief Exec, and various other colleagues from Committee and IT Services, and attendees may be joining from another location, and the usual reminder that everything is said while microphones are live will be broadcast and recorded. Members are asked to be polite, respectful and patient, and a reminder that there's information including a privacy statement about meeting arrangements on the Council's website. The first item of business is apologies for absence. Do we have any of them?
Chair, thank you. We have an apology today from Councillor Moira McKee-Shemmelt and Councillor Pauline Orr is substituting. Also from appointed member Peter Doolan and also Fraser Faulkner from the Joint Forum of Community Councils. And if I can confirm at this time, we also have 2 appointed members online, Mark Benallo and Heather Hughes.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest from anyone? Lynn? Good afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, my daughter's head teacher at Kirkhill Primary School, which is associated with agenda item 6.
Thanks very much. Councillor Stafford?
One of my children has instrumental music lessons, but I don't think it's just a connection at this point because we're not making a decision. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. Anyone else? Don't see any requests to speak. Now, the order of business is on the published agenda. There's some open remarks that have been provided with that I'll read out. It's very lengthy, so bear with me. Today's meeting is an essential step in the process the Council has put in place to develop and agree its budget for 26-27 and its longer financial plan. A consistent commitment has been given to bring information to PDSPs on responses to the third phase of the Your Council, Your Say consultation. The public consultation will assist in the prioritisation and allocation of resources to activities that have the greatest impact whilst ensuring balanced budgets for the remaining 2 years of the 5-year budget period to 27-28. Considering the detail at PDSP meetings means that West Lothian residents and businesses can see what is being considered before the Council makes its decisions about council tax and savings. It also means that the organisations and partners who are entitled to a seat at PDSP table can take part in discussions, have their say, and have the views noted and taken into account by councillors. The umbrella organisations entitled to send representatives to all PDSPs are the recognised trade unions, the Senior People's Forum, the Youth Congress, any recognised umbrella organisation representing the interest of community councils, the recognised voluntary sector interface in West Lothian, the Race Forum and the Faith Forum. The council leader has intimated that all elected members will be invited to PDSPs at which the responses to the consultation and budget setting for 26-27 will be considered. PDSPs can agree more participants, and I would suggest that the additional elected members in attendance at today's meeting be allowed to participate. I trust that this is the agreement of the panel. Perfect. There is a big picture about the Council's finances and the pressures on resources and services. Some of that is in the papers in front of the PDSP. However, it's hoped that this PDSP will concentrate more on the service issues that are relevant here so that they get detailed consideration that they deserve. That is the job of the PDSP and what we have been asked to do today. With that, then we'll go to item number 4, which is to confirm the draft minutes of the meeting of the PDSP held on Tuesday the 16th of December. We're happy that that's an accurate record. Agreed. Which then takes us to item number 5, which is the revenue budget strategy for 26-27 and 27-28. And I'll ask Greg Welsh, the Council's Deputy Chief Exec and the lead officer, to present that paper. Greg.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide the panel with an update on the Council's financial plan and summarises a number of potential saving options relevant to the remit of this PDSP to address the Council's budget gap in financial years 26-27 and 27-28. Also included in the report is the responses of Phase 3 of the Council's consultation on Your Council, Your Say, relevant to the panel. In terms of the revised estimated budget gap, this is outlined in section D2 of the report and was reported to Council Executive this morning. I would like to point out to the panel that the gap remains provisional as the local government finance settlement and the Scottish Budget Bill process remains ongoing and subject to change. Council agreed at its meeting on the 25th of February 2025 that officers would consider options to address any remaining budget gap, with options to be incorporated into Phase 3 of the public consultation, which was undertaken during the course of 2025. Both the process for the public consultation and the outcome of the consultation were agreed by Council Executive at its meeting in October of 25 and in January of 26. The response rates relevant to this PDSP are outlined in Table 2 and 3 of the paper. In terms of further detail to that, Table 4 gives an overview of the comments specific to some of the proposals that form part of the consultation, and further detail is provided to the panel in Appendix 1. In terms of officer response to the comments that were received as part of the consultation, those are set out in Table 5 of the report, and further information and detail to that is set out in Appendix 2 to the report. In terms of additional saving measures, officers have set out a number of options which are categorised under the themes of the consultation, and these are set out on page 6 and page 7 of the report, and further details to those are set out in Appendix 3. As stressed by the Chair, these all fall within the remit of the panel, and there's a number of officers in attendance to speak to those saving options that fall under the remit of the Education PDSP. In terms of Appendix 4, this outlines the work undertaken to date on the integrated impact assessments and consumer duty assessments, and these will be further refined and updated should any of these proposals be taken forward as a commitment of full council. In terms of next steps, we have a number of officers in attendance to be able to answer any questions regarding the saving options that are presented today. Officers are also in attendance to take note of key questions and any comments that any members of the panel have, and these will be considered as part of the work undertaken by the Director of Finance and Property Services when he presents an updated revenue budget for 26-27 and 27-28 to full council later this month. So that concludes an overview of the report in front of members of the panel this afternoon, and as stated, the recommendations are outlined in section B of the report, and officers will pick up any questions that the panel may have. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Craig. Just another couple of reminders before we move on to questions and comments. First of all, the saving measures are not proposals that have been made by councillors. These are suggestions brought forward by council officers to try and help make decisions that must be made to allow the council to balance its books. Secondly, none of these have yet been agreed. Decisions will have to be made by all councillors later in February. Some of these proposals may be approved and taken forward, and some of them may not go any further. And we have council officers here today to take a note of the discussions and points made by councillors and representatives taking part. A reminder that there are no motions, amendments and voting at PDSPs. The points made through the comments will be noted. They will then be used in the section of full council budget setting reports about the PDSP stage in the process. Another usual departure that I would like to do today is to take so that we can capture notes more accurately, is to take the report in different sections. So I think the things most relevant to the PDSP are section D3 and section D4. So if we could try and theme questions around that and start with D3, we'll go for questions first, then comments, then we'll move on to section D4, and then I'll give a chance for mop-up questions just in case anyone has anything else that comes to mind. I hope that's straightforward. With that in mind, does anyone have any questions, first of all, in section D3? Heather, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I've got the right D3, but I know there's two things, big things for education that my members, 85% of all teachers in West Lothian, will care about deeply. The first is about the integration of literacy and language support, and the proposal to close the literacy and language support service in Murrayfield and to put those resources into mainstream. So my first question is around the 4-time full-time equivalent, which is expected to be an efficiency. Can I first ask how many full-time equivalents work in this service currently? And I've got a few, Andrew. Will I just go ahead and give...
It's Heather, sorry, I'll interject there. So that actually features in section D4. So I perhaps should have been clearer, and apologies for that. So section D3 is about the consultation, first of all. So I'll maybe let you come back in first when we get to D4, if that's okay. I didn't want you going any longer. I also can see your mouth moving but can't hear you. I don't know if that's because I'm talking.
I think it's because you're talking. So I do have a question around the consultation in general. It talks about the number of responses in the first phase, but in the third phase, it talks about the number of comments. So it says there were 28,430 comments. So how many individuals does that give us? And also, does that include, because I was reading that you've been consulting with young people in schools, quite rightly, but they don't vote and they don't pay council tax. So do we know how many voting individuals responded to this consultation, please?
I'll ask Claire Stewart to comment on that. Claire, good afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. So there was 10,051 respondents to the consultation, and that included just over 1,500 young people.
Heather, did you have a supplementary there?
That's about 8,500 people. Can I ask how many are eligible? How many people were eligible to take part in this survey?
I'll ask Claire again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So everybody was eligible to take part in it. It should be noted that this was the highest response from a corporate consultation from any council that we've seen. We've done some benchmarking against other areas. So everyone in West Lothian was eligible to participate in the consultation.
Thanks, Claire. Heather, did you have another question?
Yeah, how many people are eligible? That wasn't an answer. How many? Number of people, please.
I'll ask Greg to comment.
Chair, the consultation was circulated around all households within West Lothian, those that work within West Lothian, and anyone that also does business in West Lothian. So it's hard to categorise a total number of people who were eligible to take part, if you like, in the consultation. I think as demonstrated in the report that was taken to Council Executive earlier this year on the outcome of the consultation, and as Claire has already mentioned, the benchmarking activity undertaken by the Council, the number of individual respondents and the number of comments far exceeds anything the Council has received from previous consultations, and certainly outstrips anything that we've seen from benchmarking, both from local government consultations and in many national consultations also, Chair.
Thanks, Greg. Heather, did you have any further questions?
No, Chair, it's not a question, but it doesn't answer because we cannot say what percentage of people in West Lothian who are eligible to take part in that actually took part. But thank you for trying.
Thanks, Heather. Councillor Stafford.
Thanks, Chair. I think I've got two questions under D3. I missed the groups that you said at the beginning that were eligible to take part in the PDSP. I'm thinking of Younger People's Forums, the Children's Rights Forum. I'm not sure if that was in there. Were representatives of these groups personally invited along, and did they decline to come?
I can probably just reiterate what I've said, that the umbrella organisations entitled to send representatives to all PDSPs are the recognised trade unions, the senior people's forums, the youth congress, and any recognised umbrella organisations representing the interests of community councils, recognised voluntary sector interface in West Lothian, the Race Forum and the Faith Forum. About specific invites to the PDSP, I'll maybe ask the governance manager to comment on what the arrangements, if they were different or the same for this PDSP.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that all of those appointed representatives to each PDSP were invited to take part in the meeting. If no representative has been appointed to the PDSP by those umbrella organisations, they would have not been invited as an exception. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Pauline?
Yep. And then my other question was just on page 5. There's obviously a number of savings proposals that were consulted on, and then a smaller number on page 6 and 7 that have got more details and costings. And it's just to know what is on the table. Are all of these savings proposals on the table up until the budget setting day, or is it just the ones that have been costed out and had impact assessments done?
Greg?
Chair, the proposals that are in front of the panel today are officer recommendations at this stage. They're officer proposals. Those have been developed by different teams within the service, and those are aligned with the feedback that's been received through the consultation. We've also had to take into consideration the deliverability of those proposals, given the timeframes and the associated revenue budget pressures felt by the council, and also those that align with current council policy and delivery models. So taking into account those three key elements has led officers to present those proposals that are in front of you today. I think, as the Chair outlined, they are proposals at this time, and should anything further come forward in advance or through the Council's budget setting process, then those would obviously be looked at for their deliverability and financial consequences, Chair.
Thanks, Greg. Pauline, is that you? Yeah. Are there any other questions on section D3, which is broadly speaking the consultation? Oh, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just a kind of minor point. Certainly throughout the consultation, a lot of my members were telling me there wasn't enough detail in the consultation. So now we have firm proposals. Is there any intention to put them back out to consultation with staff and members of the public? Because I certainly believe that more people will be able to participate given the level of detail that's now available to consult on.
Thanks, Tom. I'll ask Greg to comment on that.
Chair, I think we'll note the comment in regards to the specification of those saving options in the consultation. In terms of the process, though, the consultation has concluded and officers are presenting budget proposals based on that. So in terms of the next stage, feedback from PDSPs will be captured, those will be considered, and when the Director of Finance presents a revenue budget strategy for the next 2 years, those will reflect any further comments that are received through the PDSPs, but there's no intention that these would go out to a further fuller consultation process.
Thanks, Greg. Tom, have you got a follow-up? No. Councillor Patel, Sally, good afternoon.
Yes, thank you. And apologies again for being late. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. So thank you very much for letting me participate in the meeting because you didn't have to. So thanks. It's just, and again, I think sucks to be you because you're the first of these PDSPs and we're sort of finding our feet. We're not entirely sure how this works. So you're going to get a lot of questions on process, which will then carry us over the rest of the week. But I was just wondering again, if you could explain the sort of translation from D3 to D4. So we've got a lot of sort of potential cost saving measures outlined in D3, and then a few of those have translated into D4, and I wondered if you could outline again the criteria for doing that. Because, for example, 4A, reducing the number of school buildings, seems to be a massive potential cost saving, and then it has not translated into D4. So I am assuming that that is not going ahead for consideration.
I'll ask Greg to comment on that.
Chair, going back to the earlier kind of rationale set out for the officer proposals, there was 3 elements of that. It was consistent with the feedback, the deliverability and the alignment with council policy. In terms of the specific example used by the member there on option 4A, the deliverability, for example, of a reduction in the number of school buildings has a number of aspects to that in terms of statutory consultation, decision-making processes, and therefore the deliverability of that saving proposal within the time frame associated for delivering a revenue budget for the next 2 financial years was deemed by officers as not an achievable outcome for that purpose. However, what we have committed to as officers is looking at all of the comments that have been received around each of the proposals to inform both our medium and long-term plans also.
Okay, so then just my only other question, that 4A, for example, could that then form part of future long-term planning?
That would be a decision for council to take at a future date, but I think given that the feedback's been received, it's certainly something that officers would review, but that would be a decision for council to take, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks very much, thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Councillor Hecky.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. I think based on what Mr Carpollitt was asking about, people using gathering information, giving feedback. I just wondered if I could ask a more general question on perhaps how this consultation had maybe changed from previous ones. Had we looked at how people had perhaps, given feedback to us on how they filled it in, how they could actually interact with it? Thanks, Chair.
I'll ask Carrie to comment on that. Carrie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. The way we put the survey this time was different from previous consultations. Previously, we consulted on a list of proposals and which added up exactly to the amount that was necessary to save. This time we consulted on broad principles to help us come up with detailed proposals. The options listed in the consultation were not firm proposals, but options and examples of the action that the Council could take. So while we were interested in views on the broad principles, after respondents answered the yes or no question on the overall theme, the survey gave the opportunity to comment further in more detail, for example, by identifying any examples people would not be in favour of or suggesting alternatives. So this provided a greater opportunity to shape the final list of proposals than in previous consultations.
Thanks, Carrie. Are there any further questions on D3, broadly the consultation? Don't see any requests to speak. Are there any comments anyone wants to make on that then? I don't see any requests to speak. In that case, Heather, if you press your request to speak button, we'll come back to you in the question that you had on section D4 of the budget and the literacy and language service. If you want to maybe just start by recapping what that question was, because even I've forgot it.
Yeah, apologies for coming in too soon. So I want to, there's obviously two big proposals on the table here that will affect education fairly substantially in our review. The first one is around the integration of literacy and language support across all schools. And I'm sure elected members and everybody else knows at the moment that at Murrayfield Primary School there is a specific integration and literary language support service. So they are extremely busy. I visited there quite recently and they were telling me about what they do and the request to use all their expertise and facilities, and they do a lot of online. So my question, first of all, was, it says here that the reduction in staffing would be 4.0. So I wanted to know how many people are currently working within this service. That's my first question. I have several questions. My second question is, it says in the note that the teachers who are working there will take on other posts, so vacant posts within mainstream education. So what happens to all of this request for additionality? Because this cannot be picked up by mainstream classroom teachers who are already overworked, and we're balloting again right now over workload. Our teachers give 11.5 hours free on average every week. So
Heather, sorry, I'll try and rein you back in just to questions just now. I'll give you the opportunity to make comments.
who picks it up? Is it the mainstream class teachers who are expected to pick this up if it's going to be integrated across all schools? And my third question is around the young people with English as an additional language. What happens to them? Because mainstream class teachers are not skilled in areas to deal with all languages. At the moment, they get support from that service. So what happens to those young people? I'll leave these 3 questions and I'll come back.
Thanks, Heather. I'll maybe invite Siobhan to respond to begin with. Siobhan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for those questions. So, first of all, to say, as you said, in scope there, the proposal is 4 FTE. In total, the service has 10.68 FTE. So we're not proposing to close the service. The service would actually continue. Murrayfield is a base for the teachers, as you say. There has been no in-reach support for those pupils since 2024 at that base. The teachers and the staff visit the young people in their schools. You also mentioned about teachers in mainstream schools and the workload associated with that. So at the moment, the caseload across the whole service is 140 pupils in total. That's primary and secondary pupils. As I say, the service will continue, and it will continue to support schools in terms of supporting them with professional learning needs and providing advice as well to schools. We have a model in place which is around coaching, and we have that in place across a number of schools already, and we will continue to develop that model. And just to add there as well, I think your last point was around EAL learners, and the literacy and language service do not support those young people in that regard. So they're looking at language and literacy delay and other factors in terms of literacy, but not EAL. The schools themselves provide that support. They also have support for learning departments who have input there as well.
Thanks, Siobhan. Heather, did you have any supplementary questions?
Thank you, Siobhan. So the 4 teachers then, the staffing reduction, is it only the 4 teachers who are going to be integrated into vacant posts within mainstream, or the full 10.68 current full-time equivalent teachers who are going to be placed into current vacancies in mainstream?
Siobhan?
Okay, thank you. So obviously, if the proposal goes ahead, we will look at the model that we have in place currently, but we are looking at the 4 FTE equivalent in terms of the model going forward in total.
Thanks, Siobhan. Heather, did you have any further questions?
No further questions for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Heather. Councillor Stafford?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just to get a bit more clarity on how that service works at the moment, Siobhan, if that's okay. How do the schools and pupils access that service, and what's the criteria for having support from that base?
Okay, thank you for the question. So at the moment, there is a referral service, and schools obviously know about the service, so they would access that service and they would be in discussion with the service to look at the required support that they need.
Okay. And is there a waiting list for that?
So currently at the moment there is a small waiting list of 10 pupils.
Okay, that's great. It says in the proposal that we'll work to undertake or to ensure that support is fully embedded in mainstream provision. Can you give us an idea of what that work would look like to support mainstream schools that won't have access, or kids that won't have access to the base?
So the service itself obviously has the expertise. The service will continue, and as currently they provide that support and advice. So they would work very closely with the schools in terms of the need of the individual child or young person. And as I mentioned, there is a new coaching model which is in place, which has been successful in supporting 18 schools so far. So we would continue to develop that model. It's very targeted. So we do look at the young people who require that provision. It's not a universal at the moment, but it is continuing to grow.
Okay, that's great. And then just finally on page 21, it says literacy and language support would continue to be available to those who require it. If we're already running a small waiting list, does that just mean that this waiting list would then grow and kids will have to wait a bit longer for that support? Or is there a different category that we're talking about here?
So what we would be doing with our new model in terms of the development of that is to look at how the schools would pick that up. So we're really looking to upskill our schools in terms of that professional learning model and the coaching model. Obviously, we would be supportive in terms of making sure that schools are in a position to take that forward. We wouldn't just remove the support from the schools, so the service continues, but it's about upskilling schools so that they're capable of taking the model forward.
Thanks, Pauline. Are there any further questions on section D4? Pauline? Let's keep going.
I've got a number of questions.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah.
Measures, is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The next one I was going to ask was the burn house. Is that all right too?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. I've got a number of questions on this. This saving measure, would this be implemented from August 26, and would any changes in provision be phased over that academic year?
I'll maybe ask Siobhan to comment on that as well.
So we're hoping to, if that's put into place, we would follow the phasing of the model. In terms of any changes in staffing, that would look to be done at the start of each session. It wouldn't be in the middle of a year that we would move staff.
Okay, that's great, thanks. On page 32, under the integrated impact assessment, it states that this, if this proposal was taken forward, it would signal a fresh start for the provision of SEBN provision into a community-based model. So I just wondered, at the moment, where do the majority of children attending Burnhouse spend their time physically, and where would they be based mainly if this proposal goes ahead?
Okay, thank you for that question. So currently our young people are based in Burnhouse, which is the skills centre. So that is their base. They do have outreach input to their provision as well. So they will be involved in a range of different activities, but their base is actually at the school. Moving forward, you've maybe heard us speaking about the Inspire programme and the Inspire model. That model is where we're hoping to develop this moving forward. And there are 4 aspects to that model, which involve obviously education. Moving forward, young people would, depending again on the level of need, they will continue as their base at the skills centre. If they are ready to transition, and they're obviously linked to their mainstream school, every young person there has a link to their mainstream school, they would start to transition towards there. The other part to the Inspire programme is around industry, and that's developing their skills so that they can move or have a better chance of moving into a positive destination. So that would involve work-based learning and working with partners to support that. The other arm to that is around therapeutic input. Again, that's working with a range of partners to support, especially around trauma-informed practice, so they would be supported in that manner. And then the 4th strand of that, and they're all equally important, but the 4th strand is community, so that they are being supported within their own community, and they would be involved in a range of projects there which would work to build their skills, their confidence, their belonging within their own community. So that's the sort of development of that model. Sorry, that's a large response for your question there.
Yep, no, thanks. It's a big programme. So just for clarity then, the physical building of Burnhouse, is the plan that would then be surplus to requirement once all the children are transitioned into the Inspire programme?
So the answer to that currently is no. Burnhouse is there. It stays open for us to do anything around that. That would require a statutory consultation. And obviously we look at the need of the young person in terms of the best place for them to have as a base.
Okay, thanks. On page 32, one of the mitigations of this proposal is that we would look at improving skills across education and supporting SEBN profile learners. Obviously, this is down as a budget cut. So what are the resources that would go in to support mainstream schools to then support these young people?
So obviously the staff in Burnhouse are highly skilled. And if there is a redeployment where they are moving into mainstream settings, their expertise would be very, very important in terms of supporting the new model. Currently, we have what we call skills stations in each of the secondary schools, and these are provisions that support young people who have that SEBN need. So we already have that skill base and that expertise within the school. Our staff work really closely with our staff in Burnhouse as well, so they are already providing an advice and a very close working relationship, which we already currently have, so that would continue to develop.
Okay. Thanks, Siobhan. I've just got a couple more if that's okay.
Sorry, Pauline, I think I've changed my mind. I was reflecting on it and I think it might be easier for officers, if nobody else, and for the note takers, if we maybe ask questions maybe on the headings of the three budget saving proposals. So you've covered increasing efficiency and developing new ways of working. So if you're happy with all the questions you've asked on those two sections, I'll maybe, if the meeting's still following me, I'll maybe open up to any other questions anybody has on that specific heading, and then we'll go from there, if that's okay. You with me?
Don't envy your job, but yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll stop.
I don't envy it either.
Right, I'll try and wedge them in somewhere else.
Hey, thanks, Pauline. Heather, did you have any questions on that first heading, then increasing efficiency and developing new ways of working?
Yes, please. It says in the document around Burnhouse that there'll be an estimated staff reduction of 10 full-time equivalent. Now, I was listening carefully to what Siobhan was saying in answer there to Pauline. But in the document, it says that they are going to be placed in schools and vacancies. They haven't taught in mainstream schools. These people, they're highly skilled in SEBN, and they haven't taught there for a very long time. So how do you intend to reintroduce them? They're going to need a lot of CLPL to be reintroduced into a mainstream setting. That's my first question. My second question is around Inspire, because the proposal is to move the young people from Burnhouse into the Inspire programme. How is the existing Inspire programme going to be able to absorb all the young people from Burnhouse, because they're already stretched? And my third question is, would it not, or was it considered that because of the skill set that these 10 FTE who are already in Burnhouse have, would it not be more appropriate to use them in the Inspire programme as part of the inclusion and well-being service, rather than trying to shoehorn them into mainstream settings, and therefore giving mainstream schools that hugely additional workload, and they're not skilled enough to deal with the kind of SEBN young people who are at the moment attend Burnhouse? Thank you. Start with that.
Thanks, Heather. I'll maybe invite Siobhan to answer that.
Thank you, Heather. I'll try and remember all of the questions that you've asked there. I may have to ask you again. So I think your first question was around the skill set of the staff who are currently in Burnhouse. So I absolutely agree in terms of there will be support required to provide them with training and upskilling them. However, they absolutely do have that expertise in supporting those young people who have that SEBN profile. And as I mentioned, we do have our skills stations within our secondary schools currently. So they will provide support to our secondary schools, and their skills will be absolutely utilised in those schools. But absolutely, they will be provided with that support. And as I mentioned, we do have SEBN profile in all of our schools, currently in our mainstream schools. Your second question, sorry, could you repeat that again?
I think I had written it down. The second question was about the existing Aspire programme absorbing the current kids that are at Burnhouse.
Okay, thank you. So the Inspire programme has actually been developed with a team of staff who are within our central ASN team, and also working very closely with our team at Burnhouse. So it's not a separate programme. So that's where we understand, and we've used the research base for this to know that that this is a successful way to take this forward, and we have achieved very successful results from it so far. We have a growing number of young people who are being supported by that programme. We obviously have a small number of people who attend Burnhouse currently, and we feel that the capacity as we build this programme will be able to support it in terms of the staffing that we have, and obviously developing that further. I can also mention as well, we do have a number of partnerships that we've developed around the Inspire programme, including third sector partners, counselling services, the police. So there's a whole range of people who are supporting that programme.
And then the third question I had written down, Siobhan, was has there been any consideration in moving the staff currently at Burnhouse into the Inspire programme?
What I would say to that, as we review and develop the model, we will be looking at the skill set of all of our staff. We will be looking at where the gaps are, what's required to develop that model further. And there are some of the staff already involved in the support of the Inspire programme, so absolutely we would look at that, yes.
Thanks, Siobhan. Heather, I'm not the quickest writer. Hopefully I got the essence of the questions you were asking.
Yeah, just about my second question was around how, if the inclusional wellbeing support team that work in Inspire were left as they were, how would they manage this additional workload? Because we work with them and we know that they are working full out. So how are they going to, if it was existing numbers, how are they going to absorb that workload? And I have an additional question, because what's proposed here is a scoping exercise. So can you give us an idea of the timescale of this scoping exercise, please?
Thanks, Heather. Siobhan?
Okay, so absolutely, in terms of the Inspire programme that we currently have, and working with our staff who are currently there in Burnhouse, we would look to further develop the model with partners, and we would look at the requirements in terms of staffing. And as you say, we would absolutely be considering the workload within that as well. The timescale would fit with the budget proposal. We have looked at that. We're starting to develop a timeline. Obviously, it's a proposal currently, but from what we have looked at in terms of planning, we could meet that timescale, which is for August 2027.
Thanks, Siobhan. Heather, did you have any other questions on the first section, increasing efficiency and developing new ways of working?
Yeah, it's just around the young people themselves, because I know some of them, and I've been working with the staff who work with them, and most of them have tried to be in these kind of units in mainstream, and it absolutely did not work. It didn't work for them, it didn't work for the other young people or the staff round about them. So what are you going to do to help them, because they've tried it before, to reintroduce them into mainstream, even if it is an additional unit of mainstream? Have you taken their comments, their what they would like to happen to them? Have you actually spoken to them around that?
Siobhan?
Okay, so anything in terms of moving this forward would be done on an individual basis, in working with the young person and their family. We have child planning meetings which would occur on a regular basis, and we would develop any sort of change for that young person would be done very, very carefully and in consultation with the family. So that wouldn't just happen. We wouldn't expect them just to go back into a mainstream setting. It would be a transitional process. Also, as I say, working very carefully to make sure that all of the supports are in place. What I can say is obviously that Inspire programme, which we have established, has been successful. We have monitored it very, very carefully. We look constantly for feedback from the young people and their families. So we have basically a loop of evaluation around that. And it's very flexible in terms of what we do with that, so that has been built into the programme.
Thanks, Siobhan. Heather, was there anything else in that section?
Thank you, Chair. No, that's everything in that one section. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. That, for those of us still following, the second section then is responding to demographic change, and there's 2 proposed saving measures in that. Does anyone have any questions on those 2? Oh, sorry, Thomas. I can't see you because somebody's head's in the way. Oh, press button again. That's it. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I kind of pressed it just at the end of the Burnhouse one. So certainly my member has been in touch, Yvonne. I'll be happy to hear that there's no plans to shut Burnhouse, because I think that was a major concern for a lot of support staff. I suppose my question is, with this proposal, what will this new service look like for support staff? Because I know you're talking about the positive impact that Inspire's having. Certainly for a trade or non-teaching trade union, that's not necessarily the information we're receiving from support workers. So it'd be interesting to hear how they see the support model working within Inspire.
Siobhan?
Well, thank you for your question there. I think it's actually really important to hear that feedback, and we will be working very, very closely with staff as we develop this if the proposal goes ahead. Central to this, our support staff will be needed. They are crucial in terms of that support within our schools, whether it's our mainstream or our SEBN setting. So we'll be looking to talk to them about the skills that they would contribute towards this and how they would form part of the service going forward. So they will be a central key point to the development of the programme.
Thanks, Siobhan. Thumbs that. Got a supplementary now? Ah, perfect. Okay, so then the second section, then responding to demographic changes. Does anyone have any questions on that section? Councillor Stafford.
Who, I think, or if that's okay. I'm not sure who I'm directing this question at, but I wondered what has been the impact of the previous reviews of ELC, I think in last year in the nursery closures. Do you have a figure of what capacity we're running with across all of our ELC settings now? And do we have any information about the demand within partner provider settings? Has this changed since the closure in nurseries last year?
I'll ask Lisa Maria to comment on that. Lisa Maria, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. As part of our annual review of our early learning and childcare delivery plan, we keep the capacity and the demand under close review. We're able to place all of our young people, all of our children into our early years establishments, and we're obviously monitoring the increasing demand for partner providers as well. We're sitting at the moment with 35 partner providers that make a really valuable contribution to the early learning and childcare offer, along with our 56 council settings as well. So it's ongoing. I said annual review, but in actual fact it happens each intake time as well, where we're reviewing the staffing and the availability in each of our settings as well.
Okay. Would you be able to share the most up-to-date numbers on that?
I don't have those up-to-date numbers with me, but I'm happy to provide them afterwards if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great. My second question, I realised the first one was 3 rolled into one. The second question was just the new online system, is it Admit? Just to know what difference that's making in terms of capacity and efficiency.
Thank you. We have been implementing admits since August. It started initially with the buy extra nursery hours provision, and the team have been working really hard to first of all bring on our primary and secondary applications. So that's going really well. I think they've a couple of hundred left to process and to look into, and they're now looking at the ELC April intake as well. So it's a phased implementation. The team are working really closely together to, I suppose, work out the benefits and the positives and see the potential of the system. And we understand that that will help speed things up and make the service even more efficient and customer responsive as well.
Okay, thanks, Lisa Maria.
Thanks, Pauline. Are there any other questions in the section responding to demographic change? I don't see any requests to speak, then so we'll move on to the third section, which is reducing spending on non-statutory services. Does anyone have any questions on the proposals in that section? Councillor Stafford.
Sorry, I was waiting a minute, but too quick. I've got a few questions on each one. Is that all right? Do you want to take them proposal by proposal?
Yeah.
I don't have anything on the first, but I was looking at summer of play.
Okay, why don't you just ask your questions first and then we'll...
Okay. Yeah. So just on the summer of play, I think West Lothian Council puts in 441,000 or has done the previous year. So this looks like a cut of 50%. How can we maintain access and the provision with this cut?
I'll ask Siobhan to comment on that. Siobhan.
Yep, sorry, thank you for that question. So yes, you're correct in saying that it was a 441,000 and the proposal is to reduce it by £200,000. So overall, the main focus of summer of play, at least half of the funding has been supported to be provided by the third sector organisations. So we would propose that that continues to be the case. The rest of that has been supported by West Lothian Council and from across a range of teams. So we would look to review in terms of what has been able to be or would be continued to be supported from those teams. Also, we are, for this summer, there is money, we've been told, coming in from Summer of Sport money from the Scottish Government, and we will get a proportion of that. And a number of the activities that take place are related to sport, so we would still be able to continue to support those. So what we will do is look across the range of what we have done before and continue to support across all of the wards. There may be reduced numbers in terms of being able to support, but we would also look to try and mitigate that as well in terms of maybe the number of days on offer, as opposed to maybe 4 days, 2 days, so that we can still have that provision for a larger number of children and young people.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan. And then just to pick up on the third sector provision, I don't know the numbers, but I presume some of the community centre management committees were involved in Summer of Play. And do we know? And obviously, we've got a lot of changes happening in the community centre management committees. If they've disbanded, are there going to be any gaps there?
I'll maybe ask Beverly to comment on that if she knows off the top of her head. Beverly knows everything, so she will, no doubt.
Thank you, Chair. We do have community centre management committees that do apply for the funding on a sort of annual basis. But I think that what was likely to happen would be that we would be looking at the range of partners within particular areas and looking to get partners to work more collaboratively together to enable provision to happen. So if, for example, there were centres that were not able to run, then it's potentially using another venue in that locality. In the past, community centres have worked quite closely with some of the community sports clubs as well in terms of organising provision in local areas. So we'll just be looking at other opportunities locally.
That's great. Thanks, Beverly. You do know everything. So, yeah, and then just to pick up on the Scottish Government funding announcement, so we don't know what West Lothian's going to get yet, and it's just for 1 year, but I presume that announcement was meant to be for additionality, but it seems like we're using it to plug a hole here. Do we know what the criteria will be? Can we use it for this programme?
I'll maybe ask Greg to comment on that.
Yeah, Chair, the first comment around the range of savings in this section that you've outlined, these are non-statutory services, so in terms of additionality, they're all additionality in terms of the council's statutory functions. In terms of any conditions to the grant, we are only working on what has been announced as part of the Scottish Government's budget announcement. So any detail around what summer of sport will look like and the additional or the increase in funding to Sport Scotland, for example, we are not aware yet what that will look like at a local authority level, but we're already looking at engagement with Sport Scotland and partners to better understand that. In terms of the Summer of Play programme, it obviously delivers a whole host of activities, sporting and non-sporting. Therefore, we would anticipate any funding that comes forward with the intention of Summer of Sport will provide that additionality that the council's already putting in from its own kind of budget decisions. And that would allow the 200,000, if you like, to support the non-sporting element in terms of providing that additionality over and above the statutory requirements placed in the council. So that would be the intention, Chair.
Thanks, Craig. Pauline?
Finish on Summer of Play.
Yeah, just keep going, just work through the section. I think that's probably the easiest way, or everybody's going to get confused, even me.
Instrumental music service, just 2 questions. Just for clarity, does this mean does it mean there'll be no reduction in provision from the current level? And the bands and ensembles that exist at the moment, will they still be available outside school hours to allow children across West Lothian to attend?
I'll maybe ask Siobhan to comment on that as well.
Thank you. So, yes, there will be no impact on provision, and the ensembles and the bands will still be available, and they will be out with school hours.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you. And then the placing of non-West Lothian children in council settings, if that's all right. I've got lots of questions on this. If you want
just make a start.
If you want a break from me,
yeah.
Just let me
No, go ahead.
Is it Siobhan?
Lisa Maria.
Sorry, Lisa Maria. Just looking for numbers at the moment. I think it says we've got 103 non-West Lothian children having cross-boundary places within West Lothian. Do we know which local authorities they mostly come from, and how many West Lothian children also use their funded hours in neighbouring local authorities at the moment?
Lisa Maria.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have the numbers of how many of our West Lothian children use the facilities in other local authorities, but in terms of the local authorities where the children are coming in and using provision here, yes, we do. We have a breakdown across those local authorities, so we can see quite high percentages from areas such as Falkirk, Edinburgh and North Lanarkshire, but there are representatives from all the local authorities in there as well.
Okay, so a real mix there. What's the comparative cost of providing a funded place in our own settings compared to our private partners' settings?
Bear with me, thank you. Based on initially when the proposal was put together, we were basing our information on the 82 children at that time, and that was based on an hourly rate of £7.60, which works out to an annual partner provider payment of £8,664. And of course, now that we know with the April intake that number is increasing to 103, that brings our full total to £892,000. and in terms of our own costs within our placements, it's comparing different things. So the annual payment that we pay for our partner provider payment would be very different to our cost within our own setting, and that's based on other factors such as our quality assurance, our management costs, our building costs and such as well.
Okay, that's great, thanks. Am I right in thinking that cross-boundary funded ELC placements are statutory? Do we have to provide cross-boundary placements?
What we are aware of in terms of our statutory obligation related to the Children and Young People Scotland Act is that the Education Authority must, in pursuance of its duty, secure the mandatory amount of early learning and childcare, make it available for each eligible preschool child belonging to its area. So in terms of our statutory obligation, it is about our children in West Lothian. Sitting alongside that is the operating Scottish Government guidance where funding follows the child. So it is guidance that supports the delivery of our ELC model as opposed to the statutory duty to our West Lothian residents.
Yeah, and the guidance, does that state that it should be provider neutral, but it is just guidance?
Yes, so there is the element there about provider neutral policy framework, which is obviously what our model has been based on to date. And that annual review that I spoke about earlier in terms of our early years delivery model takes into account our changing factors. So I mentioned earlier about the increase in our partner provider settings, and apologies, I actually had my numbers there as well. We had 3,111 children in our council settings, and we have just over 1,000 children accessing our partner provider settings at the moment. So based on that changing picture, the changing need across our local community, the drop in our early learning and childcare role as well, our model is now looking at how we balance all of that sitting alongside our recurring pressure that exists in early learning and childcare.
Okay, that's great. And then probably just a final question for now. Have we ever explored anything? I had a look, and there's something called the West Partnership, which is 8 councils in the west of Scotland that seem to have a cross-boundary funding protocol to support the implementation if funding follows the child. Have we ever looked at that as in West Lothian and our surrounding council areas? Is that something we would look at?
I'm not aware of if we have looked at that in the past, but I think as part of this proposal in our development, if it were to be approved, then we will be exploring, I suppose, the work that goes on in other local authorities as well. What we do very closely do is learn practice and share practice from our neighbouring local authorities, other authorities that we link in terms of their early learning and childcare model as well.
Okay, thanks.
I'll maybe ask Greg to comment on that as well.
Yeah, just in addition to that, Chair, having explored it in the past, the West Partnership in terms of its geographical makeup is very different to the West Lothian and Forth Valley Regional Improvement Collaborative. As Lisa Maria pointed out, in terms of the spread of non-West Lothian children accessing partner provider places in West Lothian, spans Edinburgh, North Lanarkshire, Falkirk and so on. So that geography doesn't lend itself to us in West Lothian as readily as it did to the partners in the West Partnership. So that's a further barrier in terms of being able to take that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Councillor Powell.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just going to, I've only got 2 questions, but I'm just going to loop quickly back to the Summer of Play, if that's okay. I'm just, in the impact assessment, which I'm frantically leafing through on this, I think it's about page 99, it says that there's not going to be any impact on lower socioeconomic groups. And I'm not sure how that works, because I'm just a bit worried. I mean, are you confident that third sector providers have got enough capacity to offer the same level of Summer of Play activities as has been done previously?
Siobhan?
Thank you for that question. So the criteria for the funding is focusing in on supporting children, families and young people, in particular around socioeconomic disadvantage. So the partners who have worked with us, and they are established over the last few years, understand that criteria, and we work with them closely to ensure that that support and provision is there for them. So we do have a level of assurance that that will continue. Also, there is other, although that money has been reduced, there are other partners who we will still be working with in collaboration to ensure that that is also in place. So we are assured in terms of working with our partners that will continue.
So you've definitely got capacity for every single child who'll be looking for summer of play activities this summer and beyond.
And I would obviously we'd have to look at the numbers who we supported previously. As I say, the focus is around those young people who come from that socio-economic area of disadvantage, and we would be looking to very carefully ensure that that support is still in place for them.
Okay. And then my only other question is again, it's on the providing non-West Lothian children placing options at council establishments. And I'm just wondering, do council establishments currently have capacity to take the 100 plus children?
Lisa Maria?
Yes, thank you for the question. We are confident that we have sufficient capacity across our nursery provision to accommodate the 103 children should those residents choose to take up places in our council settings.
Just as a follow-up, and I'm very sorry, Chair, I'm actually looping back now to the second heading, because if we are looking ahead to 27-28 and a review of nursery capacity, is this something that's all being factored in? Is it all being done together?
Lisa Maria?
Yes, as I've mentioned previously, the work that we do to look at our early learning and childcare delivery model takes into account all of the factors, both in terms of demand and capacity across our settings. It looks at our staffing turnover, our workforce planning. It looks at the estate in its entirety as well, and looks at the patterns of provision that are available in each setting, sitting alongside the consultation feedback that we have through our survey that goes out to parents and carers across West Lothian to capture their preferred patterns of attendance, their preferred provision options as well, and again balancing that with the increasing demand for partner providers as well. So all of that information is analysed, it's scrutinised, and it's used to make sure that we have that sufficient capacity across all our settings.
Okay, and then just the final question. If it is agreed that West Lothian Council will no longer fund private placements for non-West Lothian children, who is going to tell those parents? Where does that onus lie? Will it be West Lothian Council that contacts them to say, we're not funding it, but we do have capacity in council settings, or will it be up to individual day nurseries?
I think that would be a communication that would come from us initially in terms of the changes that we're making sure that communication is consistent and clear, and it's going out both to those currently in attendance in our partner providers from other local authorities, but also making sure that information is part of our early learning and childcare delivery plan so that it's communicated on a wider basis as well. We have put in our consumer duty impact assessment that should this proposal be approved, we do recognise the need for continued or further engagement, both with our partner providers and our customers as well. So we would be looking at making sure that we were engaging widely and communicating in a clear and consistent manner if the proposal is approved.
Okay, thanks very much, Lisa Maria.
Thanks, Ali. Heather?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of wee questions around integration of school music and instrumental music provision, please. First one is, it says tuition will continue to be funded within the funding envelope. So my question is, are we still increasing what the Scottish Government gives up for our instrumental music provision, first of all? My second question is, could Siobhan expand a little on what we mean by integrating within school music provision? And third question is, if that were to happen, we would obviously have to job size the principal teachers of curriculum, who would have additionality in staff. Has that been taken into account? Thank you.
Siobhan?
Thank you, Heather. I couldn't quite hear what you said at the first question. I think it was around the Scottish Government funding. Obviously, that is still...
Yeah, I think the question, as I caught it, Siobhan, was do we top up the funding that's given to us from the Scottish Government for IMS?
Yes, right, okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, so West Lothian has a figure that they support IMS with. And also there is money that comes in from the Scottish Government. So yes, that is the case. In terms of integrating school music provision with this budget measure, what we would be looking at is around, you would see the efficiency there is around, for example, overtime, and we're looking at how the bands are supported within the school and working together between the teachers and the IMS instructors. We have looked at other local authority models, and the bands are led by teachers and or IMS instructors. So we would have a look in working with both together. We would have a look at the working week and the model that's there to review the need for some of the overtime that we have currently. We're also looking at a review of music in general. We're looking at music in departments, IMS instructors and how they work across schools. And we're also looking at how IMI fits into that as well. So it's a full review of music that's been considered. And if there were any changes going ahead, as you say, in terms of input with PT curriculum, they would absolutely be a part of those discussions and the review process. And as you say, if they were to take on any further responsibilities, we would look at their remit and the job sizing that goes with that.
Just on the first question, I'll maybe just ask Greg to clarify on that.
Yeah, Chair, it was just to put the context of the funding arrangements around instrumental music provision. It is dependent on uptake, but over the last couple of years, the Scottish Government funding for IMS is around 475,000, and the council revenue budget provides 501,000. So in terms of that balance of provision, there is council invests more than the Scottish Government funding coming in, so there is a balance of two funding streams supporting the IMS delivery.
Thanks, Craig. Heather, did you have any other questions on anything in that section?
No, thank you. That's all. Thank you very much for the answers.
Thanks, Heather. Do we have any further questions on anything in section D4 then? I don't see any other requests to speak. Do we have any comments that anyone wishes to make on the section D4 and the proposals put forward by officers? Councillor Stafford.
Just a small comment on the integrated impact assessment related to the nursery non-West Lothian children placements in nurseries. Page 126. It says that it predicts no impact relating to sex, and I don't understand how that can be possible when we know women are the primary caregivers, and that access to flexible and affordable childcare has a huge impact on their access to the workforce. And the same applies to the socio-economic disadvantage if you're working shifts or you've got 0 hours contracts. It also has a massive impact having access to flexible childcare. So I disagree with both of those parts of the IIA.
Thanks, Pauline. Tom?
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment, just to say that the trade unions in West Lothian are disappointed at some of these proposals. The first time staff seen them was when they went live on the council's PDSP agenda. So disappointed with that.
Thanks, Tom. Any further comments? Heather?
I would just say that education has been cut year on year, I think something to the tune of 10 million in the last 5 years. We can't have any more cuts. And these proposals are cuts. They're not for educational benefit. They are to save money. And so therefore, we cannot support anything which is not for a specific educational benefit.
Thanks, Heather. Any further comments? I don't see any requests to speak. Before we move on, is there any other questions that anyone has got on either of those sections or anything else contained within the paper that they haven't been able to ask? I don't see any requests to speak. Are we happy to conclude and agree with the recommendations in the paper? Perfect. That takes us to the item number 6, which is Declan Infant School and Nursery Class Review of Temporary Closure, and I believe that's Lisa Maria. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, try again.
Thank you, Chair. This report brings forward the annual review of the temporary closure of Declan Infant School and Nursery Class. The Education Executive agreed at its meeting in June 2024 to approve the temporary closure and that these arrangements would be reviewed annually. Today's paper summarises the current position. Based on careful analysis of very low applications and a limited capacity to deliver a full educational experience, officers recommend continuing the temporary closure for session 26-27. The panel is asked to consider this recommendation, the accompanying arrangements for children within the catchment area, and that a further review will be undertaken early in 2027. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa Maria. Are there any questions? I don't see any requests to speak. Are there any comments? I don't see any requests to speak. We're happy to approve the recommendation in the paper. Which just takes us to item number 7, which is the work plan. Assuming that we're all happy to approve that, then it just leaves me to thank everyone for their attendance this afternoon.